Welcome to the very first episode of Stakeholders, brought to you from the NBA in conjunction with Boehringer Inglehiem. And we'll go into why that is in a little bit of time. So, and as guests today, we have got Sioned Timothy from Boehringer. We have Cammy Wilson, who many of you will know from the sheep game, but by the end of tonight, he will be talking only about beef game. I've also got Ben Harman, chairman of the NBA, James Herrick, who is the Baldy farmer and also an NBA board member and was last year's Farmers Guardian Beef Farmer of the Year. He didn't win it this year, but he didn't enter. And we've got Neil Wilson, who happens to be Cammy's cousin, but that's not his biggest claim to fame. Neil is also involved with the NBA and SBA in many parts, and his daytime job is looking after the Institute of Auctioneers in Scotland. So, and everyone feel free to butt in at any point. So the first bit that I want to go to now is bluetoungue. And we want to talk a little bit about bluetoungue. As an organisation, we've been involved in a DEFRA-led core group from the start, which incidentally is exactly 2 years from the first week in November. It's been a long road, but this year we got access to vaccines. And I'm going to ask Sioned from Boehringer to tell us a little bit about their vaccine, how it works, what protection it gives, and what opportunities there might be from Boehringer in the future. Sioned, please.
Yeah, so it's been a bit of a crazy couple of years for us, I guess. Obviously, BTV3 emerged in the Netherlands back in 2023, and I think we can all still remember those early days where sheep farmers in particular were on their knees just crying out for a vaccine. I think that led to activity within the animal health sector that's probably unprecedented to bring one to market. In September of last year, there were vaccines against BTV3 made available on an emergency vaccine. We already had a BTV3 strain in our bank, if you like, that we knew was going to be a good candidate to pop in a vaccine, and which we could then obviously upscale, put into full production very rapidly, really, in the scheme of these things. I mean, I'm sure you're all aware how long it can take to bring any medicine, particularly a vaccine, to market. Perhaps because it's a different virus, our vaccine has some kind of specific indications which people might be aware of because they've been kind of referenced in the control strategies that have been put in place. So cattle are really important in the spread of BTV3 because they build up such heavy levels of virus in their blood, which is then transmitted to the Culicoides midge, which is then transmitted on. Our vaccine actually prevents viremia, prevents that virus burden in the blood, which means that it has been used its use rather has allowed the movement of livestock. In addition to that, it prevents clinical disease in both sheep and cattle, which is obviously at a farm level is what you're looking for as well. Yeah, we've sold a huge number of doses. We would love to see even greater vaccination because I think we're not on the other side of this outbreak yet. And really, vaccine is the greatest tool that we have in our armory when it comes to both protecting individual farms, but also controlling the spread of the disease at a high level.
Yeah, and I think, Sioned, so having been involved in the core group and seen firsthand myself through some member issues with NBA members in the eastern counties last year when the disease spread from August onwards and they saw no clinical signs in livestock. That fed through to poor scanning results in the autumn of 24 into very horrific results in the calving in the spring period 25. You know, we can give examples of people with 96 cows that have got 48 live calves, and that's quite scary. And we as an organisation are absolutely behind vaccination, and coincidentally, we're actually behind the only vaccine so far being yours, which gives protection, as you say, from viremia, and that's very important. We could debate all night when's the best time to vaccinate and when's not. I'm not a vet, and I often say this, it can get me into a lot of trouble. But for me, the best time to vaccinate would be now, and almost guarantee a year's cover if the technical documents come out, and we think they will by maybe the late spring, that there's 12 months cover. So if you vaccinate now, you don't have to worry next year during the periods when we know the midges are active. Am I right or am I wrong?
There are certain times of the year or times of the breeding cycle when handling animals is less desirable, handling cattle is less desirable. I think it's worth kind of bearing those in mind, but really we're dealing with such a pressing threat here that getting the vaccine into the animals, protecting those animals, and as you say, knowing that protection will reach into next year is the best way, in my view, to go as well. I think there's been a lot of concern around when, the potential impact on fertility and so forth, but actually the overwhelming risk to fertility is bluetongue, as you said, Neil. We have seen this vaccine used in many millions of animals now. We've sold over 40 million doses, and we know it has a positive safety profile, a robust safety profile. So yeah, I agree. Give it some thought in terms of when it might most appropriately slip in to management practices on your farm, but get it in as soon as possible is really the message, I think.
We've
So,
got.
Sioned, so can I drop in there, Neil?
Yeah,
So
I would just better. What I was going to say is that if my memory serves me right, we've got 3 farmers on this podcast that have all vaccinated, and their geographical spread is quite interesting. So from North London to just North Leicestershire to South Dumfriesshire. So Ben, please.
Yeah. So, Sioned, you touched on it, and Neil touched on it as well. For those of us who are a little bit more simple of mind, can you go through the viremia thing and say, what is it about your vaccine that makes it different from your competitors without dragging on your competitors too much? But there is a difference, isn't there?
Yeah, well, we don't know, to be honest. So as I said, we've got a different virus strain, but also within Boehringer, we have a really experienced division called the Veterinary Public Health Division. They work exclusively with transboundary diseases, so they deal with foot and mouth disease vaccine. Around the world, we've had bluetongue vaccines in the portfolio for a long time. They're really expert at producing this vaccine. So we do know that it gives a very robust antibody response, and that in the clinical trials that have been done in cattle that have had a 2-dose primary course, they do not develop they do not develop viremia. There's no virus detected in their blood when they're tested in the period after they're experimentally infected.
Right. And it was the viremia that I was actually looking for. So just explain in nice, simple terms for us what you mean by viremia.
So viremia is virus in the blood, a detectable virus in the blood. And actually, it's quite common if you look at a sort of range of vaccines that are out there. Very many of them prevent clinical signs of disease, which is, often the primary objective. We don't want to see sick animals. When it comes, though, to transmission of disease, actually breaking that infection cycle completely is really quite critical. So by preventing viremia, by preventing there being detectable levels of virus in the blood, what we're doing is preventing the midge from getting infected and then transferring that virus on, which from a broader disease control perspective is valuable, because we know that although sheep show potentially more profound clinical signs, the cattle play a really important role in the spread of disease, because they quite often, although they don't look sick, develop really heavy viral burdens, have a lot of virus in their blood, and do that for a long period of time. So the opportunity for midges to become infected and spread that virus further is high.
And I think that's a really important distinction. I don't know if I can say this, but I'll give it a go anyway. So bottle sizes has been an interesting thing over the last year for some of the smaller farmers. And I know many, like myself and my neighbours, have been sharing bottles legitimately through our vets. Is there any movement on the pot, do you think?
So it's something that we will look at going forward. So when this all kicked off, our objective was to get as much vaccine out there as quickly as possible. And in the factory where the vaccine is produced, having a single larger bottle size is the most efficient way of doing that. We do have a smaller pack size on the data sheet, which is licensed as a pack size. We're not currently producing it though, and I think vets have been really agile in facilitating the splitting of bottle to minimise the impact of that on farmers with smaller numbers of stock and minimise vaccine wastage as well. I mean, we know there were times of the year when vaccine was tight, and doing that was really key to making sure as many animals as possible were vaccinated. So It is a challenge we're aware of. There are reasons why it's been as it has been, but it's something we'll continue to review going forward.
I completely understand the requirement to get as much vaccine out there as soon as possible, and would agree with that as a strategy. I'm just thinking about going forward, and it's good to hear there's a possibility.
Yeah, it definitely, we fully recognise that. It's just managing the sort of the priorities in these kind of emergency, which I think it was, situations.
James, what brought you to vaccine? Did I convince you? Was it as easy as that?
To be honest, the thing that I was looking at was just the fact that it's not overly expensive. And when you look at the price of beef right now and the risk of not getting a cow in calf, I just couldn't see why you wouldn't do it. I really couldn't. Even for us, it was a case of actually doing it at a time when it wasn't convenient. It was a case of bringing cattle in from grass and doing it just as a standalone thing and not whilst we were already running through the crush for something else. And despite that, I just thought that it's quite simple to do if you're pretty geared up and you've got a good handling system. It doesn't take long. And I just thought it was something I couldn't really risk. And for me, losing, if it was even 4 or 5% fertility, it's a big hit. And I didn't think I could afford to do that I think my vet's charged £5 for the 2 doses, something like that, a cow. And vaccines for scours is £7 or whatever, and people are quite happy to spend the money on that, and that's something that you can actually manage yourself without need of a vaccine, whereas bluetongue you have no control over, and the vaccine is the only really control. And I just thought, I couldn't afford not to do it.
And Neil, based in southern Scotland in Dumfries, what was your motivation?
So I think firstly very much the same as James, just it wasn't that expensive. I pay a fair chunk of money for vaccines for other things anyway. Our vet was very pro as well. Alistair Padkin, who we've had on a sort of Scottish bluetongue seminar, as you know, Neil, but Alistair was very pro it. And again, I've got a smaller herd, so I was really interested in the pack size discussion. I have my 50ml pack size here, which again, like Ben, I was sharing roundabout locally with a couple of smaller farmers through the vet. We managed to divvy it up. But that brings its own challenges because of, once you broach the pack, how long it lasts, all of those kind of things. So sure, I think if you can do smaller pack sizes at some point in time, it would be great. And then I think the other thing, Neil, was obviously we haven't really seen bluetongue in Scotland or even coming up near the border. And as slightly galling as it is, but by living and farming near the border, we're sort of the first line of defence, really. If we can get enough vaccination along that border, then hopefully that sort of keeps any disease movement at bay. And when we go into 26 and 2027, that hopefully we can keep sort of trade moving, because that's one of the big things, obviously, along the border. If Scotland have a different policy to England because they're not in a restricted zone, then, we've got some pretty challenging rules for trade along that border, which impacts farmers, auction markets, abattoirs, who pretty much everybody in the chain. And vaccination does seem to be the way that we're going to try and ease that through if we can.
Yeah, so I think it's a clear message for anyone that's listening that, almost regardless where you are geography-wise in the UK, vaccine is the best first line of defence, and the more people will get vaccinated, the better. I think Sioned, and for the benefit of listeners, Sioned's going to be around for a few of these podcasts, and I think the next time we should probably dig a little bit deeper into busting some of the myths on fertility and all that, and probably we need to bring in a discussion on BTV8, which there are now 3 or 4 cases in Cornwall only so far that have came to light, and whether there is the potential for covering that and how using 2 separate vaccines or whatever the future science might lead to that. But I think we could roll that into the next episode. And whilst people are listening, the next episode is on the 27th of November. And along with Sioned, we will have Defra Shadow Secretary Victoria Atkins talking about the budget, which will have happened the day before. If we don't show up on the 27th, it's because it was even more grim than what we were expecting it to be. Sioned, you think you've got off lightly so far? We're going to dig into a little bit of the side of you that people maybe don't know. So tell us something about this that you would never put on your CV. Sorry, something about you. You don't need to know about us.
I don't know. I don't have many secrets. Probably that I'm actually a thwarted farmer. So I worked as a shepherdess for 2 years before I went to college to train as a vet. And I'd actually be quite happy to be a farmer or a dog trainer maybe. We've got some sheep at home. I'd love to have some cattle, but I'm not allowed. So if anybody would like to have a word with my husband and tell him that I should get some nice beef shorthorn cows, then that would be great. But yeah, I suppose it's shaped kind of my outlook, really. It's great to be a vet. I think it's the next best thing to being a farmer, but having that background and that understanding, I think, makes a real difference.
I mean, these guys will contradict me, but the difference between being a vet and a farmer is one's rich and one's poor, and I'll let you decide.
I don't know about that.
Where you fit into that.
And now it is time for the first of our regular segments, Rare Cuts. This is where a host or guest, past, present, or future, gives a story or fact about themselves that is rarely aired in public or would never appear on their CV. And in this episode, our Rare Cut comes from our very own Mr. Ben Harman.
I used to sell more pinball machines than anyone else in the UK. And the IFPA 6, the IFPA is the International Flipper Pinball Association. IFPA 6 held their world championships on my farm. And we had 3 TV crews. We had competitors from all over the world. It lasted for 3 or 4 days. You'll see it on YouTube if you search for IFPA 6. And we had a guy who was from Canada but played NBA, Todd McCulloch, who was huge, as you can imagine. And we set up a pinball machine out in one of the fields. And I sprinkled some nuts all around the outside of it. And we got the cattle to come up and start grazing and being interested. And he was pretending to play, and it was awesome. Anyway, IFPA 6, YouTube, look it up.
Before we get into our main interview, we are going to introduce to you another segment that we like to call Minute Steak. And this is where someone pitches a radical idea that we either support or challenge. And in this episode, our Minute Steak is coming from your friend and mine, Abi Reader.
So my pitch to you is, I think that every cow in the UK should be brown. Okay, I think that the colour of your animals is really, really important. I am a very dedicated dairy shorthorn breeder. I do have black and white cows as well, but I feel that brown cows are the way forward. I don't mind a little bit of sway on that. So they could have a little bit of brown and white. They could even have a little bit of brown and black, if that's feasible, which we can't get in the odd crossbreds. But yeah, I believe that if you want a really smart cow, then it must be brown. It's out with the black, it's out with the white, it's out with the blue. Any other colours, brown all the way. My pitch.
That's quite a pitch, Abi. Ben, as a Charlie breeder, do you want to go first?
Ben's turned his camera off. He's probably shaking the wall now, going, "Rah!"
Yeah, Ben's left the room.
Yeah, sorry, my device was having serious issues there, but I did manage to hear everything, and it was a brilliant pitch, except, of course, they all need to be white.
The white's just boring.
It's so beautiful, but I have some brown cows now as well. And I have to say they are thoroughly beautiful. So I'm half on side with you, Abi.
What I'm brown. Do you say there's variations on brown? How much variation? Are we saying red is kind of a brown?
Yeah,
I like
I'll go with
red.
red.
I'm all for red.
Yeah.
Because I'm all for red. I wanted a big herd of red cattle, and I've slipped some black ones in there. But yeah, red. I'm all for red. Yeah, but brown. Because brown, to me, my biggest concern with brown is they could get out and you might not find them again.
But it does hide the dirt at least.
It does hide the dirt, but your Charolais, you would find them. You'd see them from a long way away. It's like when, like on shoots when they have a white pheasant so they can see them all walking off. It's going to be a similar sort of thing.
Abi, does this go back to this school in the brown uniform? Is there any link into it?
Oh no! Gosh, that's terrible, isn't it? It's been ingrained in me now.
Yeah, all the awful things you were saying about that uniform, and now you're trying to get all the cows to wear it.
That's a shocking revelation, my word. Ooh, perhaps it is. Perhaps that is the one thing I took away from my school. Brown is the future.
So, Cammy, you are our first main guest on Stakeholder podcasts. Obviously, you're very famous for the sheep game, but we want to help you become famous for the beef game. We've heard you've started dabbling in that a little bit. What can you tell us about that?
Aye, so I just was 6 months too late getting into it, and I made my fortune already. I was a wee bit slow in getting the farm bought and getting cattle into the sheds. But yeah, we've started with beef shorthorns this time, pedigree beef shorthorns, and I kind of went
why shorthorns?
Well, it's a fair question. So one reason we went down the pedigree route is when I started with sheep, I just bought all the cheapest and essentially the worst sheep. You just bought the cheap ones. I just stood at the ring waiting for the cheap ones and bought them. And I said, what I'm going to do when I start with cattle is I'm going to buy less and buy good ones and just work on a smaller scale, especially to learn the craft a little bit. So that's what we did. The reason it's shorthorn, I was kind of swithering between Angus, Hereford, shorthorn, these kind of native breeds. As we were narrowing it down, Lizzie's my partner, she brought home beef shorthorn steaks from Morrison's. And they were just that good. I was like, I could eat that every night.
Are you sure they weren't from Australia? They weren't the Australian ones, were they? No.
If they were, they're still class. Hey, all joking aside, I think the best lamb I ever had was when I was over in China, and it was all Australian lamb. So there we go.
Yeah. Oh, we're not editing that out, by the way. So
yeah, I don't mind.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think lots of people have started in cattle, pedigree cattle even, and done similar to what you did round the ring with sheep, but went in for numbers maybe instead of quality. So we would genuinely wish you well with that. Out of curiosity, are all your sheep pedigree? No,
none of them.
No,
none.
Okay.
No, none.
Are you going to keep the cows pedigree?
Sheep. At the moment, it depends. You know, it's one of these things I'm learning as I go. I didn't really fully understand this whole high health scheme thing. And it kind of hamstrings you a little bit with, you know, what you can charge on and do. So, yeah, I mean, the sky's the limit. Like, I just want to build up a fairly reasonable sized beef herd. But speaking of other folk, you know, I've got friends there that have shorthorns and Angus on the high health scheme, no bother. You know, I think it can be done, but generally speaking, to do the high health scheme, you stick within those the sort of pedigree stock. So, yeah, it might hamstring you a bit. Like, I like these black baldies and all these kind of, you know, efficient cattle as well, but my system probably suits, well, I need to house my cattle, so there's maybe an argument that you don't need to worry too much about that hardly efficient cow if you need to house it anyway due to circumstances. So maybe we charge on with the shorthorns and see where we end up.
Yeah, so Ben is chairman of checks that run the health schemes, so if you've got any questions on health schemes, I'm sure Ben will be able to help. Were you influenced by Clarkson then?
Well, I'm going to look stupid here. I take it he's got shorthorns.
Correct.
That's probably a good answer,
is he?
Oh, you answered the question, man. Yeah.
Well, do you know it's daft? I have seen the cattle, but it was before I had cattle, so I probably didn't even clock what breed it. I had no interest in it, probably. I remember I had one called Pepper that you couldn't get in calf, and then it went on to have calves, so I do know that part, but yeah, no, I don't. I know he got North England sheep, and yeah, that was another thing, but shorthorns are good. Listen, they're popular. I think maybe not as popular as a Hereford. I had a good relationship with John Scott at Fern Farm, and he sorted him out with a lot of good cattle. And for instance, there, you know, we bought he'll not mind me saying, I got 10 heifers off him back in the spring in calf. Well, they'd ran with the bull, but they've subsequently been scanned all in calf, which is good. They were £3,000 a head. Well, good, they're good cattle. Like, by the sale I was at Stirling at the bull sales there, you'd probably average 4.5. The way the breeding sale was. So like the way the breeding cattle's going, and I just bought another 9 off them at 3,700. They're 6 or 8 months younger, but like the way the price is just creeping and creeping, especially the breeding cattle, because they're just not there. Like no matter what breed you're into, they're just not there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously cattle numbers are being challenged, in the whole of GB, not just Scotland. So
can I jump in, Neil, and ask Cammy, when it comes to the high health stuff, are you trying to be, is it an elite high health status you're looking for across all the diseases that we cover, or are you looking at specifically Ionis or something like that?
It is the one that I believe SAC run it, and it's Ionis, BVD, Lepto, IBRI, all these things. It's quite an extensive one that these shorthorns are in.
It is, and what I'm getting at is, are you looking at one of those diseases in particular, or are you looking at the whole suite and just trying to stay clear of everything?
Just try and stay clear of everything. If you keep buying cattle that tick those boxes, you would hope it would keep you right. I mean, that's me now. We've got 24 shorthorns to calve, and it's easy because they're all off John Scott. They're all off the same farm with the same health scheme and the same, not the same breeding, but they've all come from the same place, so it keeps it simple for now. And I suppose you stay within the pedigree shorthorns. I think just about all of them are on this health scheme. Certainly to be sold at society sales, I think they have to be.
Exactly that. Yeah.
So we'll stick with that as long as we can, and then we'll branch into something else.
And it does become difficult buying a bull when, if you've got an elite health status as you have and you want to preserve that, then you can knock off, even though all the bulls will be in a health scheme, not all of the bulls will have the same health status. And maybe you'll need to be careful about which ones you can then buy, because you obviously wouldn't want to buy something with a lower status that you end up with. So it makes buying a bull even more difficult than it already is. And it is difficult.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point as well. I'm quite fortunate that friends of mine, Natalie Hind and Ian Johnson, they have cattle at my farm as well. And they're beef shorthorns, high health, so they just keep me right on everything. They're big into showing them. We've got a calf going to Stars of the Future show at United Auctions on Saturday, so I'm going to be showing a calf before I ever showed a sheep. Who'd have thought it?
Yeah.
What a disaster that's going to be.
So how long before we get merchandise then?
Oh, it's done already. It's done. The beef game's out. Yeah, no, the beef game, I was right on it. And when's this podcast going out?
James,
Monday.
when's the podcast going out?
Hopefully Monday.
On Monday, right? I'll say no more then. We have other things coming exciting, but I can't tell you yet.
You can plug it if you want to.
Oh,
unless
no,
you're trying to
I haven't
keep
even
it
mentioned.
secretive.
Yeah, it's secret. It's not even on the sheep game yet. But it's maybe the third strand of the big farming ventures. We've got something a bit fun on the go, so we'll see what comes of that. Just right. A bit of banter, but also it should be entertaining.
Right,
so what's your plan with the cows? Are you thinking of are you going to breed your own replacements? Are you going to keep buying in? What's your sort of plan with running them?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously keeping them pure at the moment. Yes, I want to keep as long as they're suitable for the breeding, we'll keep all the heifers. And if we could breed a bull or two, it'd be good fun. I'm not overly worried. The great thing with beef now is a fat beast is worth so much money. A bullock's worth so much money. You don't really need to worry about making a bull. But if we can make a bull or two, it's a bit of fun. And yeah, just starting with 24, it's a pretty good base. Like I think you guys are obviously all know this anyway. But you get a few. It's amazing how that'll double up in a couple of years with a few heifers coming through, and it'll just grow naturally as its own. If I call that my nucleus, if I just grow from there.
Wait, where do you plan to get to? What do you think?
I am at the moment. Although it's getting dearer and dearer, I still think throwing money into beef's a good thing. Like I think.
Agreed all round.
Yeah. Where are you planning to get to? Like, how many do you think you'll run? Because are these completely separate from the sheep, or is it on ground that was ran on sheep and you're bringing sheep numbers down?
Yeah, I mean, I had planned to lamb 1,500 this year, but we're only going to lamb about 1,200 now. But that's not due to ground, actually, that's due to money. I've spent all the money on cattle, so I couldn't buy any more sheep. And I've actually bought enough tups for 1,500 sheep. So I've got all these bloody tups that I've spent a fortune on, and not enough sheep for them. It's just absolutely ridiculous. But anyway, that's a different story. But no, one issue I have been only sheep is that you don't have enough grass in the winter and you're far too much in the summer. So the cattle now give us this extra management tool. Worms is the other thing. Some of my ground is getting a bit sheep sick. So if I can start introducing the cattle to that, rotating it round, cutting silage and filling pits, that, to a lot of folk, that's like, it's a nuisance shutting off 100 acre for silage. But for me, it's brilliant because it means that I can deal with my problem of having too much grass. So I can just shut that 100 acres off and forget about it. That's going to be silage. Then you've got the aftermath for your lambs. But yeah, worms, sheep are a bit of a disaster just now. Like, there's all these worms. There's humongous rearing that's head down south. It's coming our way. I know fluke affects cattle as well, but sheep are generally outside more in the winter, picking up the fluke. There's so many issues. If I can start introducing cattle a bit into the rotation and just help the whole job, I think it's a no-brainer.
And you said earlier on a slightly different track, you said earlier about how much you enjoyed your shorthorn steak. Are you going to put one in the freezer? Or are you going to do a box meat thing as well, or are you just going to keep them on the hoof?
Yeah, but I mean, I'm not farm assured, so it's highly, the only real way for me to sell them would be to, unless I go farm assured, is just to do it ourselves, which we probably will do. But it's a difficult one as well to justify when you look at the price of them through the ring. Like, it's, if you need that, I probably wouldn't make any more money out of it than just putting them through the ring, but it would be an option to do it rather than being farm assured.
Yeah. And they're not farm assured just because you haven't got around to it yet, or is there a fundamental issue there?
No, not a fundamental issue as such. Like, it's just one of these things. It's like, I don't really agree with the way they do it. Like, the fact they tell you they're coming and all that, and then they've got to mess about all this paperwork. Like, for me, if it's about the animal welfare and that, I'd make it like an unannounced drop-in once a year, not intrusive. They walk around the sheds. If everything looks fit and healthy, look around the fields, things are fine, job done, that's fine, move on. This like tying up a whole morning to mess about with paperwork. There's a good guy, the boy on TikTok that does the peonies. I don't know what his name is, but he does peonies. And he was saying that when did it become more important? When did the filling in the form become more important than doing the thing that you're filling in the form for? I think it's such a good point.
Ben, where were you today?
So today I spent my day in Solihull in a Red Tractor meeting. I've been on the Red Tractor board just for about a year now, I guess. So there's a battle to be had about having the balance right. The supermarkets need certain things done for their due diligence, and the slaughterhouses need things done for their due diligence. And yet Red Tractor is essentially a farmer-led organization. And so trying to find that comfortable middle ground between giving them what they need, but not overburdening the farmer it's a really interesting dynamic. And, so that there's a farm assurance review that was done earlier on in the year, and Red Tractor is going through that at the moment. And it's trying to find a path to deal with the issues that you raise, but also to keep the compliance stuff that the supermarkets need. It's not easy.
Why do you say the word need there? Why do they need it?
So I can't speak for the supermarkets, but if I understand this correctly, and I think Neil could pick me up on this, they actually need the stuff for their compliance is based around food safety. And they need to show provenance, and they need to show what the food is that they're selling, how it's been raised, what medicines it's had. These are the things that they have to show for FSA and that sort of stuff. I think that's right, Neil.
Yeah, well, it's provenance and traceability is a big part of it. So, but I think, Cammy, we would all agree with you to a certain extent, and probably disagree with you a little bit as well. I think food safety is quite important, and traceability is also very important. You were going to say something, Cammy. Go on, crack on.
But and I hear what you're saying there, but what traceability is there, and what medicine records, etc., do they see for, say, New Zealand lamb? And for example, this is where it's a bit hypocritical. In New Zealand, they can inject their lambs with selenium. In the UK, that's banned because it's harmful. In the UK, we say it's bad for human health. Now, actually, the New Zealanders are right and we're wrong. But UK farmers aren't allowed to use an injectable selenium. New Zealand farmers are. And then the supermarkets come on their high horse to us about, we need all this X, Y, and Z standards, but then we'll just buy this stuff that's got something that's harmful to human health in.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I'm not going to argue on a lamb thing, but the major UK retailers that do source from Southern Hemisphere and elsewhere will ensure that the product that they're getting has got standards. I'm not going to say that they've got the best standards in the world, but there will be production standards.
But their standards are different to ours. So... Yeah. It doesn't matter what their standards are. They've got an advantage over us because they can inject selenium. We can't.
And you're right. So the standards are different. And New Zealand Beef and Lamb have an assurance scheme. And there was a comparison done between that and Board Beer, the Irish one, and various other ones. And so the Red Tractor stuff would be higher in some instances and lower in other instances than what's required. It is complex and it's a real balancing game. The worry I have about Red Tractor is if it falls apart, and I don't think it will, but if it should disappear, if it just disappeared from the planet tomorrow, then I think what would happen is all the retailers would set their own settlers, none of which had farmer input. And if we wanted to sell direct to them, we would have to have multiple sets of forms instead of just one nasty set of forms. So I think it's really important that the farmer input in Red Tractor is what keeps it level. And I think if the retailers were to have their desires, it would get considerably more onerous and complex than it is at the moment. And that's the balance, like I said, that we sort of struggle with a little bit, I think.
And just for record, other farm assurance schemes are available. I think, Cammy, probably what we need to do here is, you've given us a great theme for podcast number 4, and if we can get Sarah Miller from QMS and maybe Philippa Wiltshire from Red Tractor, we could have a right rattle round. So we could maybe break some records with that podcast.
Yeah, like I will say, I'm all a big fan of like farm assurance and QM, Red Tractor. I'm a fan, but not in the things that they prioritise. As I say, like the animal welfare, yes, the medicine book's fine. But like, it should be a 2-minute job. In cattle, everything's fine. Boom, your medicine books, they are fine. Like that's it.
Yeah,
I know what you're saying about the supermarkets, etc. And that was maybe the case when I don't know if beef was in a surplus, but like, why do they have so much power when there's no beef?
So I think it never does any harm to forget the reason that farm assurance was born. And that was on the back of BSE, when retailers demanded production standards and protection. And some retailers at that time had signs on their windows saying, "We do not supply British beef," because of the BSE thing. Now, the foundation of the schemes was right, and I think nobody would disagree that they've possibly run away too fast in a different direction. But it is, we can't, but we could talk about farm assurance for the next 4 hours. So, but we're not, because we want to hear about you. We want to hear about you.
Anything. I don't know.
Yeah,
we could debate.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I want to hear about policing.
Yeah, what did you do before? What did you do before you chased sheep? You chased other people.
Aye, we did a bit of that. Aye, so I was born and raised in a farm. Like my dad was a shepherd, so we did that first of all, and then there's no route into farming. Obviously, he just worked an employee of the farm, so there was no what you going to do. I didn't really want to go to uni as such, and didn't really have any money to see myself through uni. There's nobody to rent a flat for me or do X, Y, and Z. You need to just borrow it all. So I went and joined the police, just because it's an easy thing to get into. And yeah, it was a good gig at the time. This is back in 2008, 2009, which to old school cops would seem like modern times, but compared to the way the police is now, those were pretty good times. Like, and when I joined my team, I always tell folk, when I joined my team in 2009, there was 30 cops on it in the city centre, and like when I left the police in 2020, that same team had like 8 cops on it.
Wow.
The whole policing thing is an absolute shambles now, like, and it's just, but it's like every public sector thing, isn't it? So that was one of the factors for coming out, and the other factors were that we'd built up the farming enterprise, and the sheep game YouTube sort of thing had built up to a point where get out and just live the dream. When I gave my gaffer my DCI, my resignation, I said to him, like, I'm 30 years old and I'm never going to work another day in my life. It's mad. And I haven't. Like, I've never worked a day since.
A great way to put it. And then my wife always looks at me, she's like, yeah, but you like going to work. Like, you enjoy getting up in the morning. I'm like, yeah, I do. I love doing what I do for a living. Great.
You've got to play it down when you come in at night. You've got to be like, oh, geez.
Oh, it's been a tough day.
Yeah.
Why was the reason that they dwindled? The numbers dwindled from 30 to 8. Or is that because people left and they weren't replaced, or is it government policy, or what was it? Or a bit of both?
Yeah, just funding cuts to the police. And then what the police did, and this is how ridiculous the whole system is, what the police did to match the funding, well, it's the government as well, I suppose, to make it look like they hadn't reduced frontline police numbers, but to save money, they paid off, this is how it's so crazy, they paid off all these staff that were on like 25 grand a year and replaced them with cops on like 50 grand to do the same job. So they still had that frontline cop, but they were saving 25 grand a year. And they just took the cop off the street to do a basic admin job that somebody would do for minimum wage. And you now had this cop with 15, 20 years service in there doing spreadsheets all day for 50 grand a year, and that still goes on now. That's still the crux of the police makeup. It's insanity, absolute insanity.
Kirsty, as my girlfriend was telling me earlier, and I can't remember the details of this, so I'm hoping you remember it, Cammy, about getting a lady to sing her way out of trouble.
Oh yeah, I was talking about that in a podcast. Yeah, no, I used to work with an old school cop. Yeah, I don't know how I never got the sack. He was some boy like, but yeah, just this girl kicked off, and she booted out at us with her high heels one time. We were trying to calm her down, so she ended up getting arrested because we couldn't talk sense to her. And as we're going up to the station, my mate, she's shouting and bawling and effing and this at the two of us. And my big mate, he's an old school cop. He just turns round to her. He was, we weren't reacting to it. And he turns round to her and goes, "Do you know the Human League?" And it just totally knocked her out it. And she's like, "What? Aye, I ken the Human League." And he goes, "Do you know Don't You Want Me Baby by the Human League?" She goes, "Aye, I ken it." He says, "Mon will sing it." And then he just started singing this song, and next thing she was duetting it with him, and it was just a special memory because she was just up here. I saw somebody commented on social media, there's a name for this, it's like a psychological thing, interruption, pattern interruption or something like that, is to totally throw people off this pattern they're on. And he didn't know that, I'm sure. He just thought it would be a laugh. But she bought right into it, and we got her back up the station. She was our best pal, so we just gave her a 40 quid ticket and kicked her out the van.
Yeah,
job done.
That's policing. Excellent.
Aye, it was.
That's what it should be about, though, isn't it? That's how the whole thing should work. It's so much better.
Absolutely. Like, we used to have a great laugh in the police. Like, absolutely great laugh. Like, aye, I definitely would say I'm the kind of guy, if you got in trouble, you'd want to speak to. Like, because if anything I could do to avoid paperwork, that was me.
So what was the biggest scare you had, if you could tell us?
Biggest scare. There's been a couple. I had a lassie try to stab me one time. That was a close one. Weirdly, she was a victim, actually, and we'd phoned her to say that it was a domestic thing. The guy had got out of the jail, so she intimated that she was going to end her life. So obviously we have to, and then she hung up the phone, so we had to blue light it to her house. As we go in the door, she's like, "You PC Wilson?" I says, "Aye," and I says, "Can we come in and speak to you?" And she just stood to the side and says, "Yes, come in." And as I walked past her, she took this big kitchen knife out of her pocket and came at me with a kitchen knife, and I somehow managed to get on top of her hand and then pin her throat to the wall. But my mate coming in behind me hadn't seen this knife, and he just thinks I've lost my mind. It's like, we're here to see a victim, and now I'm pinning her by her throat to the wall, and like he's just kind of like, "What the F? Like, what the F are you doing?" I'm like, "She's got an effing knife." And then obviously we got her down and got the whole thing. But that was so, you had a wee shake about that for a day or two, because it was so bloody close. Like, if it wasn't just the way she was a wee bit tense and a bit weird, like, and I never again after that walked by somebody. I always make them walk in front of me. So if you're ever going into a house or anything, yeah, exactly. Like, I never walk by them now. I let them go behind me. I always say, "After you walk in front. I'll keep the door, the escape, nearest me if I need it."
I imagine it's one of those things that in the time you just react and did it, and then once the situation is settled and perhaps you've gone away and gone back, you just think, "Oh my God, that could have been so different."
Oh, I definitely didn't sleep that night. Like, you're just the adrenaline and a bit of shock, because like, just this knife coming towards you, and just lucky. Like, that she was weak as well. I mean, and I know that sounds ridiculous, but if that had been like a 6-foot guy, he'd have got you. Mm. Because I didn't get time. I was just lucky she was a slight thing, and I managed to just push her arm away quite easily as such, for me. But if that had been any sort of guy, he'd have bust through you there because you weren't ready for it and got you. So, but then you'd make the argument I'd have been a lot more wary perhaps if it had been a guy. Mm. Yeah, you reviewed it over and over, and you thought just how bloody lucky it was. Like, and I actually wrote the case, to be fair, when I had to write the case about it. I wrote the case that very much put the onus on the courts, the fact that this girl was terrified for her life for this. This guy had been stalking her. I said, this wouldn't have happened if you'd kept that guy in on remand, and she wasn't thinking that he's going to come and kill her. Like, she's lost her mind on that, and she got off with it, because I said, I'm not interested. I says, this girl's got mental health problems, like, and she got off with it, and that was fine by me. I wasn't interested. Again, anything to get out of more paperwork.
So are there days then, obviously you don't miss stuff like that, but there are days then when you're out in the pissing rain dealing with uppity sheep where you go, "I missed the banter being in the police force." Do you have those days, or does that not happen?
No, do you know, I get asked that all the time, and there's not one single day I've thought, I wish I was back in the police. It's just, my thing's always been, like, the biggest thing I like about farming is the people. I was brought up quite old fashioned with old fashioned values, and one thing I love about farming is the old fashioned values, and we're totally different, like. And listen, I have lots of good mates in the police, lots of good mates, but they're just wired like people in the town. They work and all they talk about is their either payday coming or their holidays coming up. They're just working, living towards their holidays. A lot of them have this mentality that your 2 weeks sick pay without a line is just additional annual leave. It's like, you take your 2 weeks every year extra as like holiday. Like that's rife across all public sectors. Public sector bodies. It's just this sick. Think nothing of it. Whereas like in farming, we're still ashamed. And I'm not saying that's right either, but I like it. Like I would hide it for you as if I'd been in my bed sick all day. I would be like, oh, I was out the day busy. You know what I mean? It has to be really something to get you to stop working. And I just love that. I love that mentality. And I very much want to immerse myself and my kids in that environment and hopefully try and bring them up with similar beliefs to myself.
So if I can, sorry, I'm dominating a bit, but if I could pick up on that a tiny bit, Cam. So it's brilliant, and I'm with you. Farming folks are the best because we just crack on, and we just crack on every day. I don't care, feeling ill, just get up, and by the time you've done a couple of hours work, you feel better anyway. The only thing that worries me about that at all is that when it comes to mental health issues, quite often we'll just crack on, and I would love I would love if there was a bit more honesty on that side of it amongst ourselves, where we say, yeah, I'm phoning up your mate sometimes because you've seen him and you think, you're right, mate. Yeah, I'm fine. But are you really? That's the only negative part about cracking on like we always do.
The mental health bit wasn't thought about years ago.
Oh, absolutely. That's where we do a lot with RSABI. Like I like like for me, like I would never say to my mates, and I'm very much, you absolutely should say to somebody, but like I know myself, I would never say to one of my peers about it because of that macho type thing, which I love in many, many fronts, but that is where it falls down. But that is where RSABI or RABI with you guys, or Yellow Wellies maybe more farm safety, but these foundations you have for farming where it's anonymous and you can just phone someone. And I'll give you a great example where actually this is something I would advise all farmers to do, because I just got into it after I got my hernia operation. I got private healthcare, and it's with Aviva. It's £83 for all 5 of us, and I think that's with like the cancer treatment package and all that. Absolutely, I don't think folk realise how cheap it is. And I had a chest infection a wee while ago, and well, I did that thing where it'll be fine tomorrow. I could barely breathe, coughing, all these things. 2 weeks go by and it's just not getting any better, and I'm like, nah, this isn't right. But I'm worried to go to my GP because I'm a farmer and met this tough guy, and he goes, you've got a cold, get on with it. So with the private health thing, so I'm sitting at 9 o'clock at night thinking, right, I'm gonna have to go to the doctors tomorrow. And then Lizzie said to me, can you not do anything through the private thing? I thought, oh yeah, you've got a GP on this private healthcare. I filled in the form. I had an appointment at 10:30 at night, FaceTime Zoom call, told them my symptoms. Yeah, you've got a chest infection. Emailed me the prescription, picked up the next morning. Like, what a service. And if she'd told me, man up and gone with it, I could just quickly hung up the call and been like, oh, sorry. So there was nothing to lose. That's what I thought. I'm not going to see this guy again.
Yeah.
So, and I couldn't believe it. Emailed the prescription, I could go and get it the next morning, job done. No going to the surgery or nothing. So I would recommend private healthcare, like if you can afford it, even if it makes things tight. I think it's a good investment the way NHS and stuff is now.
Yeah, and I think you think about farm safety as well. You can soon hurt yourself, and that stuff covers it. I mean, I know I've got insurance. I don't know how much it is, but like you say, it's not a lot of money. And the things it covers is crazy. And you just think of, if you're banged up and you've got to pay someone to do your job whilst you are in a mess, then it's just a handy bit of money, isn't it?
Oh, it's the beaten waiting times. Like I've done my ankle, I've torn the ligaments, my ankle, and through that private healthcare, the guy you go and see is the guy that does the Scottish rugby team. You're straight to Ross Hall in Glasgow. You go and see. They basically say to you, when do you want to come? You go up. I go and see him. He gets his diary out. Says, I can do you give me a fortnight. I could fit you in. The reason I haven't done the operation is because you need 3 months in a bloody moon boot, and I just can't do that. So, but it is on the list, but it is a no-brainer. Like, if, as you say, there is so much out there to hurt you on farm, it's well worth doing.
And James, just going back, when you said, did you say bound up or banged up? Just for clarity.
That's a lot extra on the policy.
That's a different policy altogether, I think.
Yeah, but there is things that, like, your insurance company doesn't cover all sorts of scenarios.
No, that'd be right.
So, Cammy, ambitions for the future. You know, what's the next 5 years look like? And while you're telling us that, think about the next bit is, if you had one wish that Scottish Government could deliver agriculture, and it's not to do with the recent grant scheme, but what would be a big ask from the government, along with your 5-year plan? And you could put the two together. Is there something they could give the industry that would help you build your 5-year plan?
Not necessarily, because I think that farming's been screwed so much now. We're actually seeing maybe come into a golden period where cattle numbers, I think in Scotland the suckler herd's down 53,000. Sheep aren't there, the farmers aren't there, and I think those that are left are hopefully going to see a kind of golden period, and it seems to be kind of worldwide, not just us. So next 5 years, I think we could hopefully, I know I'm fortunate because social media and other things I do help pay the mortgage and push us forward, but I'd like to think that farming could push on and be profitable and be strong off its own back without government help. But what I will absolutely say is that, like, I think a lot of folk are forgetting about this grant that was out last week, that the Scottish Government still put 21 million into Scottish farmers' hands. Right, okay, it went to some of the big boys and maybe not everybody they said it was going to go to, but we still get 70 to 80 quid an acre on Region 1 ground subsidy payments, same as we did when we were in the EU. Look at what's happening in Wales, England, Northern Ireland. We are flying ahead in Scotland. So if I was asked Scottish Government to do anything, it's just forget about us and keep doing what you're doing. My big thing, and I've moved on to this, and I'm not a Nigel Farage fan. I just do not like the guy, but I do agree with this scrapping this net zero nonsense. Like, we are setting us so far back economically against the big boys around the world that we've gone, all empires fall. That's how it is. But, like, Britain is just losing its seat at the table by making itself weak economically. I'm just back from China. China's not planning to take over the world by arms. They're taking over the world by economics. They're controlling all the minerals, and they're better than us at everything.
Yeah, Cammy, can you tell us a bit about China? Because we would have followed a little bit of that. Now, people in China are not allowed to go on the internet and take pictures, and you were sending live videos all over the world. How did you manage to cut that off?
But do you know why you think that, Neil? Because Western media makes us think China's the bad guy and that you can't live a good life over there.
Yeah, we had a board meeting and we were actually chatting about the fact you were taking all these videos and you were in China. And I said that I think the way that we look at China is similar way to the way we look at America. And you think you're going to go to America and just get shot. And it's the same thing. You think you go to China and you get your phone out and you're going to get banged up. You're never going to see the light of day again. And actually, I think when you're there, it's a completely different scenario to what you think it's going to be.
Absolutely. Like the Western media has got it lies to you about China. It makes you think like China's this, dictatorship, this communist regime and that. One thing to think about dictatorships, right? The dictator has to keep the people happy, and he wants a strong country because it makes him strong. With a democracy like we've got, all they care about is winning an election every 5 years. So it's all short-term nonsense to win votes, not long-term strength. I'm not saying we should be a dictatorship, but it's not all bad.
Sounds like it.
It's not all... Well, it's better than the nonsense we've got now. All they're doing is chasing that vote every 5 years and coming up with stupid short-term policies, and it chops and changes. China plans for the future. China's investing, I think it's something like 40 billion a year into Pakistan, building ports and taking control of all the ports. They own all the railways in Africa and man them. They've got all the mines. That's not for to win a vote in 5 years' time. That's for strength in 20, 30 years' time.
It's maybe to win a lot more than just their own country's rights, though. I mean, it's empire building, Cammy, is it not? And it's
absolutely
yeah. So you talk quite passionately about what you believe in and what you're doing. Do you fancy politics?
I absolutely would. I really do. I really would get into it. But the reality is, you need to be immensely selfish to be a politician, because, well, I've got 3 young kids to raise here, so that's my first job. And I want to be a farmer first and foremost, but if I could get them set up and they take on the farm a bit, I probably would try and get involved in it. Just in the Scottish front, really. But listen, it's going to be interesting over the next few years. See if Farage gets in, like, just going into politics a bit from a Scotland point of view. Like, Scotland's a strong country in its own right, and if one thing that could tip it in favour of the SNP and such like is if you have an English nationalist as Prime Minister. I think it would see a massive change in the perception of people in Scotland that maybe are against the independence argument. It's certainly changing my view on it, seeing what's happening down south, thinking...
And it changes, Cammy, it changes fast. So, a year past July when Labour got into Westminster and SNP got absolutely battered in Scotland, I thought then that, if Labour play their cards right, they could become dominant in Scotland, and they've probably done the exact opposite, and they could get wiped out in the Scottish elections in May next year, the way they're going. It's incredible. And you've alluded to the short-term policies and that, but even the, allegiance to parties is becoming really short-term now as well. People jump about.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But then that's the selfishness. Like, they're only jumping about because they know they can see what reform's doing and they want to get in early and get their seats secured. Like, it's just they're just saving themselves. Like, they don't really believe in reforms policies over the Conservative policies. It's just to see the Conservative policies are the Conservative Party's dying on its ass. But like, Rishi Sunak was actually all right. I watched a thing about him. When he was debating with Keir Starmer. And everything he said is coming to pass. They'll put up your taxes, they'll come after your pensions, X, Y, and Z. And everything he said in that debate, that's what it was. It was a montage of him saying these things and showing you what they've done. And it's like,
they should have to put their manifesto forward, and I think they should have to sort of stick to it. There can't be the wiggle room that you can't just tell people one thing, go and do something completely different. There needs to be some sort of boundaries there, because it's just so unfair to everybody who actually believes in what you said they were going to do. It drives me mad, that. It really does. And I used to be like you. I loved politics. I would sit up all night watching the general election, and I just got to the stage probably about 5 years ago, and I just thought, this is driving me mad. Just, you can't keep up with it. But that's something I always think. If you're going to stand on something, you've got to have the balls to actually go forward with it and believe in it. Or else what are you saying it for? You don't believe what you're actually saying yourself.
Well, the most ridiculous thing about Labour is they were going to win no matter what. So why say anything?
That's true.
Like, why make a manifesto? Like, why put this make this so difficult for themselves? And I listened to Political Currency, which is a fantastic podcast with George Osborne and Ed Balls. And George Osborne just summed it up great. He said, like, when we come in on a promise of austerity, we were upfront about it, and we got stuck right into it from the beginning, and we did all the hard stuff at the start so that people could see the benefits towards the end of the term. Whereas Labour they've targeted all these groups, the pensioners, the waspy women, the farmers. It's all failed. So now their popularity's never been as low, and now they're going to do the unpopular thing. So, like, everybody dislikes them now. They've come in a wave, they've crashed it, and now they're going to do the unpopular thing they should have done in the first place. And it's just, I don't see, as you say, you touched on the Scottish elections here, I do not see how Starmer keeps his job after May. Like, if they're wiped out in Scotland, how can he keep his job?
Well, I'd like to say to the listeners that they heard it here first, but a lot of people are saying that, Cammy, it could be a tough late spring for him if the polls are right. And history tells us in the last many, many times that the polls are pretty close, and if they get annihilated in, Scottish elections, Welsh elections, and English, council elections, there's going to be some big questions to answer. And of course, as an organisation, we're apolitical. We generally think they're all pretty rubbish. Inheritance tax, Cammy, what's your, even this week we've been back in London pushing that and trying to see sense. What's your views on it?
Again, it's just going after people that don't Labour. They're going after people that don't vote Labour. So okay, you can't fault them for that. But the way they're doing it's terrible. The threshold is far too low. They know that now. They absolutely this is what annoys me a wee bit. And I'm still the common sense in me and the decency in me still think she's going to raise that threshold in this budget. Because they know they're wrong on that front. And a taper, if you're going to do it, okay, right, let's do it, but let's do it sensibly. Let's say 3 million of a threshold, and a taper. Let's say if you're at retirement age as of April 26, you're exempt. Anything before that, you hopefully still have time to do something and mitigate it, and you've now got this 3 million buffer. I think it would sort the whole thing. What I would actually do with it if I was in politics and I was changing it, and I would do this anyway, not just because of this inheritance tax thing, is as it is just now, when the farmer passes to the son or daughter the farm, it's revalued on death. And if that son or daughter sells it in a year's time, their capital gain's only in the growth in that year. I would wipe that revaluation out. And if the father, as many stories, the father bought the farm for 100,000 back in 1950 or 1960, and now it's worth 3-4 million. Well, if you want to sell the family jewels and the family legacy for a quick pound, you can pay your capital gains tax on the 3.9 million of difference, and to hell with you. Like, that's what I think.
Yeah.
But if you want to farm that, you're left alone. That's my thoughts.
I think that's pretty sensible, to be honest. Because it's looking after that. We all talk about food security, and it seems to be such a big topic. And then, they're bringing in this policy that could drastically undermine it in 10 years' time. If you look at the age of the average farmer and whatever else, it doesn't take much to see that there could be quite a big landslide of people just dropping off and farms disappearing. And yeah, like you say, if you were to say, okay, well, if you want to sell it, then fine, you've got to pay taxes. But actually, if you want to be there producing food to keep this country strong and going, then why not? Let's support you. And that just makes a lot of sense.
And it's all for 500 million, which I know sounds like a lot of money.
I know.
But 500, what's it going to buy you? A couple of Oasis tickets, and
it's
25
hours. 25 hours of the NHS.
25. I love that as well, when they were like, "Oh, do you want the NHS or do you want farmers?" You're like, that is not an argument here, is it?
No.
You can't start
so dishonest.
Yeah, and because you don't use the NHS, Cammy, yeah.
Aye. I know. But that's another thing I would actually, here, just when we're getting into policies, I would put forward. I paid for my hernia operation, but man, I was so annoyed that you couldn't claim the VAT back. And I thought, but how ridiculous. It's getting me back to my work. There's all these people off sick for injuries. Why can't, well, aye.
Well, then, when it's the work-related injury, you should be VAT. You should be able to get your VAT back.
Exactly. So I think it should be tax deductible, and you should get your VAT back. It should just be a business expense. And then that option be there for employers as well. If you have an integral part of your team that is out with a hernia or an ankle or something like that, at least you can claim. I dare say maybe for an employer you can claim the money back, but at least that's an option there for you too. Like, I just think if you want to, I know people get upset about that because then we get into this argument of two-tier health system where the rich are getting fast-tracked this way, but it actually takes the pressure off the waiting lists. Like, because those doctors aren't been taken from the NHS. They're working in their days off for extra money.
You could also argue, yes, you've got a two-tier healthcare system, but you're also paying your taxes that are paying for the other healthcare system that you're now not burdening. So theoretically, you're helping out as a,
Exactly. And I have a question just for James and Ben, I suppose. See you guys down south, like looking up at the SNP in Scotland. Like, do you not look up at that and just think, like, what a great go Scottish farmers have got? Or do you actually just not give a shit about what's happening in Scotland?
No, it's funny.
I care a lot.
From a farming point of view, I look at you guys and I look at people like yourself on YouTube, Crawford or Nicola Wardy. You look at those guys and you're like, my God, if we were in their position, that'd be pretty great, because we're doing all right. But you think what we could be doing if we were in Scotland, And I've got a family member distant family member, moved from a farm just down the road here. They sold a farm. It was like 200 odd acres, and they sold it for getting on 4 million quid, and moved up to Scotland, and they bought the Blealac farm in Aberdeenshire. And it was like 700 acres, and it's absolutely beautiful, and it's right on the edge of Barramore. And then you're just looking at them like, oh, you know what? I'm actually pretty jealous of that. That was quite a smart move. Did that 7 years ago. That was a good move, really.
And that is one big issue with just kind of touching on it there with inheritance tax is, your land down south, down near where you guys are, or even getting further crazier into, like Clarkson land there at 20 grand an acre. Well, that's growing as much wheat or barley or whatever as a lot of the land up in Scotland. Arguably in a year like this, it's growing less.
Yeah.
But ours will be 10 grand an acre.
So that speaks back to the ROI on agriculture. And so I live in a very expensive part of the country, right on the edge of London. So my ROI would be sort of around 0.4%, something like that.
Yeah.
So if I was to live off fresh air for 10 years, I still couldn't pay that back. But back to how we feel about Scotland thing. So I feel, and I know Neil does as well, and I think James probably too. So we export as one, right? The UK, we export as one, and we eat as one, and yet agricultural policy is devolved. And I'm not saying that you should have the English agriculture. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying it's bizarre that you could live half a mile down the road from your mate and you try to create food with a completely different set of rules or set of legislation. It strikes me as the devolve, like the, by all means, devolve all the things you want, but they don't devolve military because we fight as one. And you shouldn't devolve agriculture because there's rivers that start in Wales and end in England, and cattle that are born in England and, you know, go to Scotland and vice versa, and everything moves around. It's insane that we have different policies. That's my rant.
Yeah. And if you I remember listening to a podcast and they talked about Game of Thrones and they were talking about, I can't remember the guy, the king is in like the first series, and he was talking to his wife, Cersei, and the Dothraki army were coming in and they said, you know, Cersei said, we'll be able to walk all over those. You know, we've got 5 kingdoms. We've got 5 people who'll fight for us and they're just one. And he said, what's a bigger number, 5 or 1? And you're like, yeah, if you unite everybody and they've all got the same cause and the same drive and the same thing, you know, all going for the same aims and the same goals, you're in such a more powerful position. Firstly, from a point of view of being able to sell things, but also from a control point of view. If you want to start and then control, like there's always on the news down by us, it's like, oh, poultry muck's got in the River Wye and whatever, but it's coming from Wales and then it's a problem in England. And we can control that so much better if you're singing from the same hymn sheet.
And so, Cammy, my views on this are quite strong. I'm not anti-devolution, but devolving agriculture was a process that was put in place at a time when nobody ever thought we'd leave the EU. And, you know, that's I think the problem is created. So we're, you know, and so the devolved countries have got control of their own budget. And we've got this crazy saying that Gove came up with, public money for public good, you know, with taxpayers' money. The money that used to come from Europe was taxpayers' money. It was just taxpayers across Europe, not just our money. We have a scenario that, you know, suckler beef producers in England are getting a lot less support than you, but the retailers don't see that and the consumers don't see that, and it will create some real big balance problems. And my concern for Scotland will be, you know, they keep saying there's not going to be a cliff edge, but every year that goes by that there's not significant change, you're probably getting nearer a cliff edge.
Yeah, I hear your points there. I mean, a couple of things I'd pick up on. One, I'd ask you directly, would you think we'd be in a better place if powers were devolved to the English government? Would you be happier having the policies that England has just now, or do you prefer Scotland's?
So I think agriculture shouldn't be devolved, but we should pick a best policy currently. Am I allowed to say that? So
you don't think it should be devolved, but everybody should do what Scotland does?
More or less at the moment, yeah.
Aye. That's what it is, yeah.
We'll take that.
Yeah, so there's that argument. My other argument was, if all powers were devolved to Scotland, let's say, and we were independent, then, and okay, there's the argument, how do you get into Europe? But bear in mind that it was England that took Scotland out of the European Union. So I get, that's your argument for doing what they make us do. Isn't always good.
Yeah, so again, as I often say, we're apolitical.
Oh, but that's just a fact. We're not showing bias in any way there. That's just an absolute fact.
Yeah, so my comeback on that would be that England's Scotland's biggest market, not the EU. So you want to be sticking close to England, not the EU.
I'm talking about Brexit. I'm not talking about independence. I'm talking about the Brexit vote.
All right, yeah. Well, yeah, but it's England's still the biggest market. But it's the people that voted to leave. Well, so let's take that argument a different way, because we've had enough yes-no votes as a country you'd think would learn by now not to have fucking yes-no votes anywhere.
Well, that was the problem. David Cameron got cocky. That's the problem. He won the first one and thought it'd be no bother to win the second one.
Yeah. I thought, and that's right. So, and you know, as a United Kingdom overall, and I'm gonna get myself in trouble here. We voted to leave the EU, and I lived in Aberdeen at that point, and Dundee voted to leave, and I used to drive through Dundee thinking, you know, I wish you had left. It might have been a better place. So I apologise to all Dundee inhabitants, by the way.
Yeah, fair play to Scotland. Maybe they were just a little less gullible than some parts of England when it came to that. Maybe they read the side of the bus and decided that it was bollocks, because it was an insane set of decisions that got made off the back of so many lies, which is why I always say I've got no time for rhymes like garage.
I think, Ben, the big thing for that, the whole Brexit thing for me, and this backs up Cammy's argument. The Westminster government that took everything for granted lost the argument, and the sitting Scottish government at that point won their argument domestically, hands down. They played their card brilliantly.
They absolutely. I mean, yeah, David. The whole thing comes back to Farage again. Like, it was only put on the table to win the UKIP vote for the Tories and to quieten down Farage. And
how's that going?
Exactly. And now, but it's like we do this to ourselves. It's almost like a kind of a bad relationship where, like, they do you wrong, and then they say, "Oh no, I'll never do that again, and I can make things better and all that," and you let them back in, and it's like it's just going to happen again. Like, we've all forgot about it. We've all forgot about the bus and all the nonsense he said. His argument is, but he didn't get to make the deal. If you think he could do a better deal than all the guys that tried it, like, you're just dreaming.
Yeah.
But I do agree with some of his policies. For example, in his manifesto, he's scrapping inheritance tax. It still is on the Reform Manifesto, though, scrapping inheritance tax. All for it. Scrapping net zero, I'm actually all for that as well.
And you mentioned that earlier. I mean, net zero, I think, and I believe the Prime Minister's in Brazil at the moment at COP, and will probably be, as a country, signing up to funding, let's say, some South American countries to ensure that there's no more deforestation. And this is not an NBA view, I'll make that point clear, but I think, the charge towards net zero is going to cripple the country. And, again, almost all the opposition parties now have said they would bin it. And the only party that's fighting on with it is unfortunately or fortunately, however you look at it, the party that's got the nearly 170 odd majority in government, which makes them fucking powerful, I guess. So
yeah, but and SNP, a negative SNP are big on it as well, which is another fact. When Scotland's as green as they come, like it's yeah. Anyway, sorry.
So are we saying we align with Tangerine Palpatine here in Washington? Drill, baby, drill. Is that what we're saying we want to do?
If you ever look at economics, and you pitch what drives economic growth, it's always cheap energy. If you make energy cheap, you get economic growth. You make energy expensive, you cripple it, and it's fascinating if you look at the graphs.
So what's the cheapest form of energy?
Well, nuclear, is it not?
That's a great question. Isn't it?
Because it's nuclear and it's wind.
Drill, baby, drill.
These are cheaper.
Long term,
yes,
you don't know, do you?
There's a counter argument. We should be rushing headlong into this and electrification and sorting out our national grid, which is in a right blooming pickle, because actually that's where the cheap energy is. But it doesn't solve driving trucks, because we can't really do that with electricity, I don't think. So I'm just going to try and put a counterpoint in, that's all.
Yeah, and there's some interesting facts. So China, as everybody knows, is building or has continued to build more and more coal-fired power stations every year. But their emissions outputs overall from coal-fired power stations is decreasing, because they're building these with the latest advanced technologies and reducing emissions. Cammy, it must have been a great place to visit, because the Western world is blocked out from what goes on there. I think that they'd be leap years ahead of the rest of us now.
I mean, interestingly, solar panels everywhere. Half the cars are electric, so it's not like they're just disregarding it all. But the great thing is they're cashing in on it all, because the solar panels they're probably selling us the solar panels. They're definitely selling us the electric cars. And again, as I say, they've got these rare earth materials for making these things that net zero are pushing us towards. It's not that I'm not denying, and I want to just get this clear. I'm not denying global warming or that things are getting. I'm not denying that at all. What I'm denying is our impact in it. Compared to, I mean, they're driving around the streets of Delhi. I think it was Delhi I seen on the news. They're driving around the streets of Delhi with massive trucks firing out water vapour because the pollution is so heavy that they're trying to reduce the pollution. Do you know what I mean? And Scotland's cutting its nose off to spite its face to save the world.
And definitely, I'm going to make the point as well, Cammy, that any of us are denying the environmental challenge we face. It's just the extreme pathways that some people are choosing to try and reach it, I think, is the big worry. And, as an example, a third runway at Heathrow.
Exactly. Money talks.
And as Jeff, you raised India there. So our government might want to cut our cattle population. I think the Scottish government has said they do want to. Hang on a minute, where are the cows? They're in India. There's 26 million cows in India. who aren't producing anything because they're walking around the streets eating vegetables, and that's literally sacred cows. And yet, like these efficient cattle in Scotland and in England, you want to kill them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Ben, you're hitting something very relevant today, because the Scottish Government announced today that they are not going to adhere to the Climate Change Committee's recommendations to reduce livestock numbers. They are not going to challenge livestock numbers any lower than what they are. So our challenge now is to encourage policies to reverse the downward trend and get it going the other way. You know, Cammy set in the stall, he's doubled his herd this year, he'd double it again next year maybe.
Well, but interestingly, you know, a lot of people think looking for the outside in, the price of beef, that'll encourage more people to put more cows on. But I think what we're seeing is actually the boys that have been thinking, and girls that have been thinking about getting out, are saying now's the time to get out.
Yeah, cows are big money, aren't they? Bank it.
How many dispersals have we seen this year?
Was it, what was it? Was it QMS that put out the, Neil, you'll know, that put out, was it every suckler cow farmer in Scotland needs to just have 2 cows, extra cows?
Yeah. 2 more cows.
Yeah, 2 more cows.
Which is, I mean, it sounds like you were saying earlier, was it 56,000 cows less? And you think, that's a lot of cows. But then you go, every farmer has 2. You know, well, that's perfectly doable.
But the worrying thing about that, though, I think with the QMS thing, it's not even about, well, I think it's more about critical mass for abattoirs, etc. I think it's not even about beef supply. I think it is about retaining our essential services like our abattoirs and markets and all these things, because certain parts of the country the herd is declining so much that some of them aren't viable.
I think there's a bit of both, Cammy. I think the original plan was to try and fill the herd is decreasing at such speed that Scotland's share of contribution to maintain the same levels of production now, 9,000 extra cows by 2030. You know, and as you say, if everybody keeps an extra 2 or 3 cows, and it's such a simple message that, and we as an organisation would love to push that out there, and, you know, some simplistic government policy would be that, you know, Cammy, we're going to withhold all your subsidies unless you increase your cow herd. It's that simple. So you only need to increase it by 1 or 2, but, you know, just maintain numbers. It would be a great motivator.
Yeah, and although I'm saying the Scottish system's great, it has a lot of flaws, of course, because you're not that incentivized to actually farm on it. Not as bad as when you're planting birdseed or whatever you guys down south are getting paid to do, but still it's not. But it's hard to come up with the perfect system. It is very difficult.
The perfect system would be that all farm produce had a retail value that nobody needed subsidy. No, that's the perfect solution.
Yeah, but then it's difficult as well, because I spoke recently at an event, and the reality is, to protect our way of life, we have to make very little money. Because see, if farming and producing food becomes big money, then big money wants involved. And what you need is a man and woman that works for minimum wage. And that is our way of life, and that's what makes these great people and these great family farms. And actually, if farmers were paid what they're due and could make the money that they're due for their products, big money would look in and say, I'm going to buy a farm, I'm just going to stick a man in there to do it.
That's a beautiful point. And we're already seeing BlackRock are investing heavily in buying land and gates, because of all the things you can go and buy, land is the only one that you'll never get more of, isn't it? So it is a finite asset, and they are looking at it. But I think that's a most beautiful point. I've never heard it put like that.
Yeah, well, that kind of came into my head visiting Turkey. Over in Turkey, most of the big sheep outfits are all big money, big investment companies. And they pay guys, the average wage I think is £500 a month, and they just build massive slatted sheds. The sheep don't come out. Lamb price there is the same as it is here, so you can imagine you can pay guys £500 a month, and you have a controlled environment like a slatted shed, where actually you don't need to be that good a stocksman. You just give them a TMR, you lamb them. I dare say if they die, they die, but then that's true for everybody working with sheep, and you pay the guys £500 a month. There's a big profit in it, so that is big in Turkey, and it just made me think, you know, we are lucky we do not have big money doing that with us yet.
If we had big corporate companies, we'd end up in the same position as the police. We'd have to give them their 2 weeks sick leave every year on top of their annual leave.
That's it, exactly. I dare say they don't do that over in Turkey, but yeah, another nightmare we run a business like that here.
Yeah, great. So, Cammy, give us a 60-second rant on something that's just seriously pissed you off in the last wee while.
Oh God, there'll be loads of things actually, but loads of things. I know I should have had that one prepared, because quite often during the day I think to myself, I should remember this. I joke about what grinds my gears. It's like I should really remember this and talk about it in my own podcast later, and then it goes out your head and you just move on with life. What really pisses me off. Obviously, I'm passionate about politics and the shambles that is. Yeah, do you know? I'm honestly, yeah. If we talked in general thing, I'm sure I could go on and rant about anything. But as it is just now, what is pissing me off? You've got me there on a thing that. See, it's hard for me to, because everybody says they're a positive person, but I'm a very positive person, and whenever my head's dipping a wee bit, like I always just think about where I am compared to where I ever imagined I would get, and I'm already way ahead of that.
And you think of that woman in a tenement in Glasgow with a knife probably as well.
Well, that's, you think of the people, and you know what actual poverty is and actually being poor is, it's not, farmers, we can always feed ourselves, we generally live in nice places, we've got fresh air, that work ethic, but we're very fortunate here, and I've got 3 wee kids there, we've got, Lizzie does 70% of the work, so, I've got a bloody great life. So yes, whilst I do like a rant now and again about different things, as we've seen in this podcast, most of it is like, does it actually worry me? Because I'm a big believer, see, if you'll just work hard, you're going to get on in life. That said, someone did say to me once, if all you needed was hard work, the donkey would own the farm. I did like that one.
Yeah, I know, and I'm sure our podcast listeners, Cammy, will enjoy some of those new nuances. And on behalf of Stakeholders hosted by the NBA, we thank you very much for coming along, and we look forward to your political career unravelling very slowly. And I'm sure we'll see you in Holyrood in Edinburgh at some time in the very near future.
Yeah, and I'll say, Cammy, back in November 2025, you said on a podcast that we should be scrapping net zero, and yet here you are with the SNP. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, oh, it's AI, it's fake, it's not, it's a deep fake. But no, thanks. Listen, guys, absolutely really enjoyed it. I just like to say, James, as well, got you on Instagram there. I really enjoy your stuff, mate. Really progressive and forward thinking, and really enjoy it, mate, as well. So keep that up too. So, no, thank you for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
And to end this podcast, we have got our final segment, Off the Hoof, where we invite someone to rant about something that has pissed them off lately. From politics to potholes, farming to football, anything is fair game. And this week, ranting to us is none other than Mr. Neil Wilson.
This has been pissing me off for a long time, but it pissed me off again today, big time. It's the 3 C's: co-design, co-development and consultation, in any order that you want. So UK governments seem to use these buzzwords to hide behind when it comes to discussions on or around agriculture and agricultural policy. Whilst I would be a fan of all of these 3 C's when used correctly, in the vast majority of cases, co-design, co-development and consultation are rolled out by governments in an effort to defend position and move responsibility to industry for some of the decisions that they make. However, I think there's just a national governmental failure when it comes to engaging with our industry properly around about these 3 C's. Time and again, we'll have spent hours on consultation responses that are generally ignored. Organisations like the National Beef Association and Scottish Beef Association, and the one I represent, the Institute of Auctioneers, have spent countless hours and lots of pounds, monetary pounds, not weight pounds, trying to help with co-development and co-design of policies, only to be ignored. But my plea to all governments is to properly utilise these engagement tools and the expertise in our industry, which is where the expertise is. It's in our industry. It's generally not in government. Rather than continue to waste our industry's time and money by overpromising and under-delivering, and then hiding behind poorly constructed consultations and poorly managed co-design groups when they end up making a complete and utter mess of whatever policy or scheme they want to roll out next.